Welcome everyone, Dr. Thor here. Get ready for Gnosis. And also, I always like to, every lectures now and then, to understand that I am authority. I've been researching these areas for over 50 years. I've written over 35 books, 5 courses. I've been on CNN, I've been on the BBC, I've been on hundreds of radio shows, I've written hundreds of other articles. I run what is now IGF Success Tech and are basing training and getting people to reach high levels of empowerment, no matter what they want to achieve in life, and teaching people how to do that. Taking research that I have put together and bringing it to a level that can be used by the individual easily to empower themselves. So this is the voice of authority speaking here. I've been involved in just about every area of metaphysics you can think of, and have studied these things in-depthly, and have engineered many type of consciousness machines, developed hundreds of products. It goes on and on. So it is important to understand that when we talk about these things. Now, let's talk about EA Koetting, which of course is his magical name. He runs the organization called A Living God. Become a living God is what he's telling people to do. Very typical. And he's a self-avowed Satanist trained by Carl Welch of Chi Generator and Magitech fame. This is his mentor. He has stated this, and you should check that out in the video, which I have a link down below. So this is readily admitted by him, and it's very interesting that that's where he got his training from. Not from the Church of Satan, not from other people. And of course, I'm sure he was a member of that and so forth, but there's also the very nefarious backgrounds to him as well that I will get into. But apparently, of course, EA Koetting is his magical name. He lives in a small place in Utah, an ex-nuclear testing ground, to get back into his history, close to his mommy, who is living in the same area and town that he is, or adjacent town. And, of course, his mother is a Mormon, and he is a Mormon, or was a Mormon. So that's his background as a Mormon. A few years ago, I don't know, maybe it's been 5 or 6 years ago, he was cleaning carpets, and of course, these things into your building. But someone, of course, came to him, and he got connected as a spokesman. And we'll get into all this as well. But that's his background. So he was a good little Mormon boy. He's close to mommy. That's why he lives where he does. He claims he lives there because it's a beautiful area. He lives there because mommy's there. And so I guess he has a close relationship with his mother to some degree. There's no talk of his father to any great degree. We don't really know what's going on there. Apparently, from what I can piece together, I've stopped listening to his stuff. It gets to be such dribble after a while, but you fill in his little history, is a very typical conniver, huckster guy. And I allege that he's connected to a whole group of hardcore Satanists, and a lot of this has come out, and he is a front man for them. That's what I allege. He's another person who has been pushed up to there. But let's go back to his background. Apparently he was in the Marine Corps and couldn't get anywhere there. So he, like so many people, they drop out of the military because it's difficult and a long dead-end street for most people. And of course, he doesn't have any background either. So he's got this whole diluted story of magic and the people he works with and everything else. And of course, it's all satanic based. He was trying to find his way in life and was looking for a way that he could make money from his satanic practices. And he labels himself as a Satanist and believes in the Satanic Bible and all the other things. So this is his personal statements. So he ran across this site called Blackmagiccom, which said they would help get you work, that you could work for them as a magician and you could make money. This site was ran by Carl Welch, and he then became his mentor, trained him, and he worked for him. So that's how he got his start. And you can be guaranteed that that connection is still going on. So this is important to everyone to understand. So a few years ago, he was cleaning carpets. He was then plucked from his obscurity. Or again, most of these people that get involved in these things are backed by somebody. It's difficult to be successful in an organization of this type. There's very few quote, magical occult organizations that ever make it. It's very difficult to make money in it. Most people are doing this as a hobby, and you can probably, even today, and when I started in the 80s, there probably were 3 or 4 full-time organizations that were occult-based. I mean, that's how bad it was. Now, of course, there's probably a lot more that are making some sort of a living off of it, but because it's been gained in popularity. So he apparently is doing that. It's really hard to say how well he is doing. These followings you find on Facebook and YouTube, so much of this is contrived and bought. And of course, they have a lot of supporters that are in all these organizations that make sure that their stuff is seen and that they make money from it. And don't think that this doesn't happen on any level. It happens on all levels, is what I should say. So we need to take this again. So the whole idea is that they picked him to be the face man for this new Satanic organization, which is quite bizarre. He keeps talking about things that, of course, copying much of what the Guild has done over the years, talking about ascension and all sorts of other things. Now, to have a Satanist talk about ascension is amusing. So what they're doing is they put out now, like all Satanists do, this really mixed pot of confusion to draw people in. So when you criticize a Satanist for being negative and bad, they say, well, look, you're not trying to grow. Yes, we are. We're trying to ascend. So the whole idea is that he's mixed this kind of nonsense in with it, trying to take Satanism from this bizarre belief system into a middle-of-the-road reality. And the problem is that this is what's happened in the last 30 years with the occultism in general, is that it's turned into this giant satanic movement that has really taken over every part of the occult business and most New Age and other places. They've done this not through their basic belief systems. They've done this through being supported with lots of money and being backed by organized crime, who is a major part of all of this. And this is what I allege. And I allege that EA Koetting has been backed by and is part of this. He's the face for them. Now, it's difficult to find an articulate person to represent an organization. So the bottom line is that whatever you want to say of Koetting, he's a fairly good speaker. He's fairly entertaining. He comes off pretty well, but you can see it's very coached, and I believe he's reading off of monitors and all sorts of things. There are people behind him who are doing this, who set up his website. There are people that are gathered together from what used to be a group of people fighting with each other, the Satanic community, into a very organized community of Satanists that work together. So he has all these people. He has people also tend to like I consider his writings kind of comic booky, and they're very vacuous. There's really nothing new in any of his writings. It's all just old stuff, but some people like his writings. They find it entertaining, etc. So I would say that he's a fairly decent writer. And of course, he's now those are two things, a good spokesman. Those are two things that are difficult to find in this world. Particularly a spokesman and someone who wants to be the face of Satanism, because there are problems there. So this is basically where he's come from. So he started this Become a Living God organization. He wrote several books, which got published by different publishers. Strange ones from, I don't know, was one from Finland or something? And, the usual turd books. They're printing very pretty covers, hardcovers with embossing on them. But the insides are turds. There's nothing overly new here. And certainly, he has absolutely nothing new to offer. All of his writings are pretty much the same dribble that have been out there. He puts minor changes on them. He has claimed to have contacted and find new demons, which he's written about. And again, this is his system. Who knows? That's the only, at least he's come up with something new there. But none of his techniques are new. And of course, he can't demonstrate any power. He's very contradictory as well. I've caught him in many, many contradictions. One of them was the fact that if you go back many years ago and listen to his comments on extraterrestrials and aliens, he thought that was completely nonsense, which is very typical of occultists. Yeah, you can use magic to influence somebody and kill them, but there can't be no aliens. And of course, the UFO people tend to think that magic is a joke. Well, there's no real things going on there. So we get into that same reality that is very typical of these kind of people. All of a sudden, now that extraterrestrials are pretty much considered as fact now by any thinking person with massive amounts of government proof and individuals coming out, what does he say? He talks about aliens, and then he talks about, yeah, it happened to me last night. I was frozen, and I felt something being stuck in the back of my neck. And then in the morning, I felt this lump there. So here we go again, that typical Koetting BS. He's always having these great experiences on all these areas. He's a young guy and thinks he knows everything. He is relatively well read, but he's read all the classic texts, and he doesn't, like most pseudo-intellectuals, he can't really synthesize the information to come up with a greater, better conclusion. Because, like all Satanists, they're not very creative ultimately. So there's really nothing there, and he's come up with nothing. He's got lots of films of doing rituals, which, of course, attract people's attention. People want to see rituals performed. It's interesting. People are sick of just reading books. I certainly understand that. And these are kind of comic operas. Nothing happens. They're staged fairly well, but it's difficult to get really good feeling from these things. He claimed he had contact, and he filmed this with a great spirit. And he would go and run around the circle and get a message, and he'd come back and write it down in a book. And he says, well, the spirits only show themselves to me. Well, this is, of course, one of the biggest cons, but, of course, that's completely incorrect. There are many spirits that have been filmed, and people have seen them in a group, but he never has other people to verify what he's doing either. He does all these things alone, so he doesn't even have other people to say, well, yeah, I saw that. Well, there's never any proof from him whatsoever in these areas. So to film nothing takes a bit of balls, I guess. So here we go with this. He's living in this little house in this little part of Utah, which escapes me at the moment here, where he was a carpet cleaner. Now he's written books. He's done well. He's been pushed ahead. And, of course, all these criminal elements have to support their people somehow. And they're not going to take their money. You have to make your own money. This is why particularly the radionic community, the orgone community specifically, and, of course, all of the cultism has been taken over by organized crime, I allege. And I know this for a fact, but, it's very difficult to prove it. So, these are all alleged. But somebody put him up. He doesn't have any kind of technical skills. He's a good speaker, like most people. It's like when you see a good commentator of anything, a host. They're called MC, Master of Ceremonies. These people come up, they talk well, they introduce people. They don't know how to work the cameras. They don't know how to do anything else. They don't know how to edit. So that's what they do. So he doesn't know how to do any of that. So he has help with all of this to do that. So somebody had to build his website and everything else, which I don't know. It's a style of website. This is your traditional website now, heavily video-based. Which people tend to like. So it's a well-done site done by particular people, and they announce who they are, etc. You can find that out of who built his website. But it's much more complicated than that, because there's a whole structure going on here. And if you look carefully and you watch, the one way to do research is difficult, because it's extremely time-consuming. Now, you got to go in and watch everything that somebody does, because each little video that they make, they're going to talk about something a little different than they did before. They're going to release something they didn't release in the past. And you have to put these things together. So that's where he mentioned being in the Marine Corps. He mentioned being a Mormon. All these things that happened with him. So, as all these things go, I mean, that's where he's coming from. And, he's very, somebody's talking to him. He's very coached on what he does. They want him to be very humble because apparently this is something that his handlers, his alleged handlers, are very careful about. They want him to talk like the nice guy. He tries to talk like that. He tries to be the big friend kind of guy, the big brother guy, and not to get into too many conflicts. So he answers criticisms. All of these things he's done. And, of course, he's hawking products all the time. So he's constantly selling stuff. That's what he does. So he offers services. If you want to talk to him, it costs you $1,500. So, he's a celebrity. And the rest of his ritual services that he offers are all very expensive. Well, if you claim you're that great, people should pay for quality work. Yet, I've had people contact me behind the scenes telling me all sorts of stories about him, which I cannot verify. Threats that he's made to people, services that don't work, all these things that, they talk a lot and then they get nasty about it when it doesn't work for them. But they charge some pretty outrageous fees, and it would be nice to get some real feedback on that. But whatever, that's his business stuff. But I mean, that's where they're coming from. They're not doing a great service for anybody. Whatever they put out is put out at a very high price, and I don't see no payments or help me outy attitude, which is very typical. But as I said, he's a good spokesman. It's difficult to find that. It's also going to be difficult to find somebody who comes off well, who's young to do these things, and who wants to show their face. So there's lots of Satanists. Of course, they have a lot of Satanists. Everybody in his group, basically, is showing their face and being outwardly about their satanic belief systems. So when we put all the pieces together, what do we find out that's coming here? Well, there's a few things that have come out. As you said, very typical of what he did with extraterrestrials. The minute something becomes popular, he's in it. And now he agrees with it when he poo-pooed it before. He refuses to debate anybody, such as myself. I tried to contact him, and his underlings would not allow that because of the fact that they're not going to debate anybody who has a brain. So the whole idea is that he talks to everybody that he agrees with, and he has his own very untrained group of outsiders that he's dealing with, the satanic people that he's around. All these people, some are writers. He has one of his main writers who's a good writer, but he's writing about the Necronomicon. You're talking about H.P. Lovecraft's fantasy creations that he has given this great empowerment to and keeps writing endless stuff about it. I mean, what is that all about? Lovecraft was very anti-occult, but they probably don't know that. What else do they don't know? What other garbage are they writing that is not based in anything? But, like Koetting's writings themselves, they're pretty vacuous. There's nothing really new in any of these writings, and they come up with no new systems. They have no creativity, and they're really just catering to a bunch of very egotistically based people that somehow think, well, the world is bad, so being a Satanist will empower me. Well, the people in power ain't going to let you Satanists in there either, whether they're Satanists or not, and you're just kind of the front line. You're the brown shirts of the Nazis that go out there and try and get the masses going while keeping certain coffers full. So, now, in terms of what's going on behind there, as I said, there is a guy behind the scenes, someone who's created his website for Koetting, which lists and several other ones. And, of course, there are other people. But when you listen to things carefully, and when he recently got into some trouble with the police, which is interesting. It seems like a very bogus case, which makes it even more interesting. Was the fact is that they tried to harass him on many, many levels. Of course, he's living in Mormon-controlled country. And the Mormons, of course, are very anti-occult, except because the only occult they want is their own occultism. So, and have known to be very racist as well. So the whole idea is that. But the Mormons are all part of the bigger control factor as well. They're all been taken in. The Mormons are part of the, quote, Illuminati control factors. They work for the organized crime like everybody else does. They're all connected, as is their police department and other things. So it's the same old story. They're just like anybody else. So apparently he ran the foul of his satanic handlers, as I allege, and they put the hammer down on him because he wouldn't do certain things, if we can believe that. So, but maybe he didn't want to go along with certain things that they wanted. There's a very dark aspect. Maybe he wanted to stay on the more fringes of filth instead of getting down in the real stinky filth. So we don't really know. But this was stated online in a couple of areas where if you read through carefully, and again, who's going to read hundreds of pages of information on the same subject matter? Well, I have, and then you read certain chat places and postings, and a person stated that, Koetting didn't do what he was told to do, and they clamped down on him. So he got arrested for possession of certain hallucinogen drugs, etc., and they went and raided his house and other areas, apparently. And it was a very, the whole story is very sketchy and bogus from what I can see. So it definitely was someone being harassed. And as much as I don't like the Satanists, I don't like their controllers, which are even worse, who will harass anybody. So they went after one of their own because he wasn't cooperating to the level they want. They tried to get him on gun charges, saying he has no right to have... What do you mean he has no right to have guns? I don't quite understand that. As far as I understand, Utah, you have, or all of the United States, you have a right to have a gun. So I'm not sure where he was, and apparently where his mother lives, and a few towns over, the law is you have to have a gun there. And this has been a bizarre twist to the laws in recent years, where some communities require you to have a gun. So they tried to get him, and I don't know, it's some ridiculous, well, he didn't even have, from what I remember, they weren't, serious weapons. He had a rifle. I think it was a rifle. I don't think he even had a handgun, a rifle and a shotgun. It's ridiculous. So they tried to get him on firearm charges based on what? I just don't get that. So bogus charges just to make it worse. They did find, apparently, hallucinogens. I'm trying to remember exactly what they were. I don't know if it was LSD or other things. And I think they found some marijuana as well. And I think maybe there were some amphetamine. So he had a fair amount of drugs. Again, don't quote me on all of this. I'm giving you general. I'm not going to spend hours trying to get the exact information here. That's not the point. We're talking about general. So he was busted. He had various amounts of drugs on him, and these were relatively serious charges. I have no idea. This was many years ago, and I have no idea what happened. Apparently, he's not in prison. I don't know if he's on parole or what. But certainly he has the money or the connections to get the right people to assist him. So I don't know what happened there. If anybody does, please email me and let me know what happened there. But apparently nothing came of it. They arrested him. They arrested his girlfriend, who he lives with, in his tiny little house, and his unattractive girlfriend. And this is your top Satanist. But, this is a bogus charge. And the point is, I'm not sure, as I said, what came of this. I'm assuming he was then put under complete control by his handlers after this incident, showing them what they can do. That's what I allege. So all of this is very, very interesting of who this EA Koetting is. But of course, as I said, he's got this very slick trying to get people involved in what really is a nasty thing. Trying to sugarcoat the fact that Satanism isn't about all this terrible things, that Satan is the good guy. And there's this debate going on right now, which has been perpetrated by a bunch of pseudo-intellectual authors, parapsychologists, etc. That, well, Satan is one thing, Lucifer's another, and of course the fallen angels helped man. This is all the stuff they're trying to push on you. And it's totally taken out of context. And this is nothing new. This is a belief system that Lucifer was the good guy and that we've been told the wrong story. This goes back at least a couple of 100 years, if not further. There's been, quote, Luciferian societies that have been around for thousands of years, believing in Lucifer. And a lot of people think the Masons are Luciferian as well, where in their inner orders they teach that Lucifer After all, Lucifer was given earth, and the fallen angels were thrown down here, and supposedly they educated people. So, well, there's an interpretation of this, and Lucifer means the light bringer. Well, the real interpretation is a person who gives off light because they were thrown out of heaven. So if you throw something like a meteor through space, what happens? It glows, falling stars. So that's really the interpretation of Lucifer that very few people seem to understand. It's been thought of as this star and Mercury and all these. This is a bunch of nonsense. And you can believe whatever you want, but there's also what I call general understanding. And the general understanding of the consciousness that's involved is that Lucifer is part of evil. He brings disease, destruction, hatred, wars. That's right, Lucifer and Satan are one. Now, these scholars want to say, well, this isn't true. You get all these people that have written books like this, which is, what's the point? Who cares? So, the bottom line is that these are negative energies that have been given these negativities for years, and it's what the general interpretation is. I mean, people can no longer walk around with swastikas on because the interpretation of the swastika is evil and Nazi. So you can't really put that anywhere anymore. It has a negative. It's been ruined forever, and that's the same thing with Luciferian and Lucifer. Well, how can you use that terminology and then try and whitewash it? What's the point? So, what is really behind that? Why are you rejecting good? You say the good stuff, those people are bad. Well, they are bad, and we need to take care of the corruption that is in the Vatican and all these religions who basically are evil people. But that doesn't mean that we throw out the entire belief system. Let's get rid of the filth and correct it. The same thing goes with the military, the politicians, the police. Well, let's get rid of the bad and bring back the good. Those are things that are needed by society. Basically, whether we like it or not, we need a military. We need police, but we don't need criminal police. We need to reform what we have. So the whole idea is, well, we'll just not have a military. Everybody goes home tomorrow. Well, I don't think that's a practical response to anything, as there appears to be horrible enemies of everybody everywhere. People are killing each other all the time, no matter whom and where they're from. Muslims kill more Muslims than anybody else. So this is the reality out there. So what do we look at that? So, as we look at him, so his handlers have done this and put him back in line, and we don't know what's happened. Apparently, since he's still operating, this has been dismissed, or there's something happened, or he paid a fine, or whatever he contrived with these people in these court cases. But he was arrested, his girlfriend was arrested, and he has videos talking about how he's going to use all his spiritual empowerments he can to fight this, obviously. His organization is not all that large. He claims that he is filling all the orders himself. He doesn't even seem to have a helper. He does sell certain things, altar cloths, books, other things that he makes up that he sells, as well as doing his main way of making money, which is through consultations for $1,500, as I've mentioned, and doing rituals. And he's open to discuss anything with you, so he says. So I'm not sure what all that means, but that's the way he's making his money. But he doesn't seem to have necessarily a staff. He doesn't have an office. He doesn't seem to be taking in that much money in terms of living well, which is always something I've criticized, particularly Satanists for, that, when you can drive up in your Ferrari at your beach house with your bimbos, then come and talk to me about your belief systems, because people are into all that. And of course, he's not. Well, I can get all the money I want, but I don't want it. I'm not interested in money. That's why he sends out at least 2 emails a week hawking products. Is that right? So the whole idea is always trying to make money because he's not making money. So, it just isn't true. So these are the problems when people make claims like this, that they can do anything, have anything by using their systems. It's just not true, plain and simple, and nobody has that capacity to do that in general, because there's too many complications in life, and there's a lot of people that want to stop you from doing that. So, I mean, that's how he makes his money. He doesn't have any kind of serious business going from what I could see. He's not making that. He's got addresses in different places where he has mail forwarded to him, or God knows what that is. So the whole idea is all these things don't add up to a big business. And as I said, I've heard him saying, well, I'm busy packing packages. Well, if you're fulfilling your own orders, you're not doing a very good job, EA, because you should have helpers, employees, etc. Now, I don't know if that's changed recently, but it seems to be a very much of a, in-home business and everything that goes with it. And he doesn't seem to have much assets in general. Fancy cars, bigger houses, attractive mates. None of this does he have. So he has all pretty much, which is rock bottom manifesting, even though he's been pushed by his alleged handlers into all this stuff, because he doesn't have any capacities for doing any of this. So, and then of course he puts on these ridiculous shows of power that don't show anything. He can't manifest anything into actually seeing them, yet he claims he has all this contact. So all of this, and the people he's hooked up with, the people that he highlights it against, well, I'm not impressed by any of them. I don't think they're, they're kind of your oddball, very bizarre people that are connected to Satanism. But, what would you expect? So if you're going to have a punk rock band, do you expect people to be wearing three-piece suits? So I guess that fits it. Now, what they can do, what are their manifesting and money and everything else, doesn't seem to be much. Their literature is pretty low level. And of course, as I've mentioned, Koetting's writing is pretty boring. It's very comic booky. There's nothing new there. And he tries to attract many other people to try and bring in to publish their books and other things, which doesn't seem to be much of that happening. But he has different people he works with, because there is this entire cabal of Satanists that he has. He even has taken copyrighted information of mine and used it by one of his orders, and people that have no right to use it. The Blackmagiccom order that he is connected with, which has the original order, which I own the information for, and was basically a interesting, unique system of magic, the Spitzalot system. Some person has taken that, apparently, who works with the disgraced, now older person, and has taken that book and used that name and has published that person. This is copyrighted information, and he is well aware of it. So it just shows you again. Of course, they want to target me because I'm the only shining force for brightness out there. And of course, he refuses to debate me and everything else because he's got a minor little pea brain. So this is all part of what's going out there. And on top of the fact of, they have no problem taking information that other people own. And is he doing that with everything else? And where is it? But, they have no new ideas. None of these people have new ideas, and none of them are anything profound to you. They're not doing anything. But what's scary about these people is they're trying to give you this gloss that everything is okay, that he's into all these things from astral projection to ascension to everything else that is now all middle of the road. And this is not a problem, that we are growing and ascending as demons. Well, the point is Satanists don't ascend, they descend. They go into a different reality. So he's mixing this up into this horrible toxic pie and selling it to the public in a very soft-smoking, nice manner. And he pretty much comes out with all of that stuff. You can see how he presents himself, that this is very, very coached. He's being very careful of how to represent himself, the words he uses, the attitude he comes off with. So it's very much to a point where people are making sure that he doesn't come off like an arrogant person, which I'm assuming turns off a lot of people. So this is something that they've worked on him a lot, to make him as humble as possible, and as much as I'm your buddy, let's all work together type attitude, and him taking many other people in. But, most of the people he takes in, like this quasi-Norse guy who's his buddy, some little kid, I mean, he knows absolutely nothing in that field. And I think that's very typical of the people that are around Koetting, is that they're pretty inexperienced. They're not well researched. They have one little area of knowledge and really don't know much past that. They are a little cabal of a group of people that work with each other and support each other and are backed by this organized crime handlers that I allege that all of this area is. And there is a huge group of people involved in Satanism now. And with the handlers and the alleged organized crime that's behind them, have seized publishing, all the industries, all the radionic practitioners, all of them have been taken over by these groups or being used by it. And this is being done with the help of violent, organized gangs that go in and control people that that have tens of thousands of members across the United States and who work directly with your local police departments, who are as corrupt and as satanic as you can get. So this is all that, as far as I'm concerned, is pretty. Anybody who knows anything about this knows these facts. But at this point, it's, of course, conjecture. So I allege all this. So this is where he's coming from. He, as I said, is directly connected to his mentor, Carl's Wells, Mr. Magitech Chi Generator, is his mentor. I think people need to understand that and understand how all the pieces fit together when you know that one fact. And that one fact does not come from me. He stated it personally. That's his background. That's who he was trained by. He was never really involved in any major organizations or stayed in them, and he states this himself, that he was not a long-term member of the Church of Satan or anything else. He claimed when he lived in Las Vegas, that he was part of the Golden Dawn there, which of course is a black mark on them, and still has good connections with the Golden Dawn. Well, I think we have to worry about that connection if you are interested in that tradition. That's another tradition you should be very careful of then. So he wants to go back and forth in all of this stuff and talk about that in the meetings he has, of where he is coming from, what is his training. But the bottom line is that's his training. He never stayed in an organization long enough. He is a talking head. He's the front man for this organization. And it's very interesting to, if you carefully watch him, to show how he goes in and out of whatever's popular at that time to try and gain people's interest and following. Very, very interesting. But the bottom line is that his training, where he was trained by and what he's doing, which must include, which he doesn't talk about, the use of radionic machines, is Carl's Wells, which his whole organization is based on that. So, Wells had this entire black magic site, which is still up, and radionic black magic programs, etc. So, this must be a large part of what Koetting is doing, but he's not moving into that area for one reason or another. I'm assuming he will in the future as things go on, but that may be an unwritten law that he's not going to sell machines or get too close to Wells, because that's his territory. So, all of these things that go with it. And of course, if you've seen Koetting over the years, man, the fact that he most likely is probably using this technology that tends to deteriorate yourself, these toxic machines, he looks terrible. And he's, for a guy who's as young as he is, and of course he claims to know everything, which is near impossible. I mean, there is something to age. We assume that you're reading a lot more and you've been around and experiencing. So that's what age does. But it doesn't necessarily make you more important. But the whole idea is that this is where he's coming from. That's his background. He really has no traditional training. So he wasn't a member of the Temple of Set. He wasn't, in terms of staying with them. I don't know if he ever joined them, but certainly was not active there. He was not overly active in the Church of Satan. So, I mean, this is his background. That's where he's getting training from, which again is something that is actually very limited. So he tends to know everything, goes into all sorts of magic, all different traditions, and tries to bring people in to actually support him and get involved in his practices. This is a very deceptive person. There's a lot going on behind the scenes. People need to understand that things are not as they appear. There are huge problems with groups of people who are running and controlling the world on all different levels. These are all things that very few people know about and needs to be further looked into. And again, if you are educated, if you know what's going on, that allows you to deal with things in a way that you can make sure that you prosper and are empowered by whatever you do and not get disempowered or connected to a bunch of evil, negative people that'll drag you down. So knowledge is a great empowerment. Forewarned is forearmed. You need to know what's going on. You get involved with groups like this, there's all sorts of behind the scenes shenanigans going on. This is not some intellectual pursuit which the Church of Satan tend to be more about, that this is an intellectual thing. And of course that turned him off, I'm sure, which is the reason why he wasn't more involved in it. But and who knows what's going on there as well. We really have no idea what's going on with these groups. But the pushing of this, the pushing of Lucifer is okay, there's no problem here, everything is gray, is the kind of thinking they want to move you into, because that moves you away from a stable base and into their control. It isn't the correct way of thinking, it's the controlled way of thinking by a particular group that wants to use and abuse you. Until next time.